The Vulture and the Little Girl, 1993. This photo was taken in Sudan in 1993 by South African photographer Kevin Carter. At that time, Sudan was going through a very bad famine. People were starving and many children were dying from hunger. Kevin Carter traveled there to take pictures for a news agency to show the world what was happening. In this photo, a small child is seen crouching on the ground, too weak to move. She had been walking to a food station when she collapsed from hunger. Not far behind her, a vulture landed and waited. The bird was not attacking, but its presence showed that death was near. Carter said he waited 20 minutes, hoping the vulture would fly away, and then took the picture. He chased the bird off afterward, but it was not clear what happened to the girl. The image quickly spread across the world. Many people asked why Carter didn't help the child. The photo won the Pulitzer Prize in 1994, one of the biggest awards in journalism, but Carter struggled with the reaction and with what he had seen in Sudan. Just a few months after winning the prize, he died by suicide. The photo is now one of the most famous pictures showing the pain caused by famine. It also started many discussions about what photojournalists should do when they see suffering. JonBenét Ramsey's bedroom. On the night of December 25, 1996, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey went to bed in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado, after a happy Christmas. Her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, and her older brother, Burke, thought she was safe and sound. Early the next morning, Patsy Ramsey found a long note taped to the stairs. It claimed that JonBenét had been kidnapped and demanded $118,000 for her safe return. The Ramseys called 911 right away. Police and family friends searched the house, but they found no sign of the little girl. Detective Linda Arndt, one of the first officers on the scene, told John Ramsey to look in the basement, since police had not yet checked it. When he went down, he found JonBenét's body on a blanket. Her hands were tied above her head, she had tape over her mouth, and she looked badly hurt. She had been hit on the head, strangled with a cord made from a paintbrush handle and a nylon rope, and there were signs she might have been touched in ways no child should be. From the very start, the crime scene was not kept safe. Officers let too many people into the house. Some even cleaned parts of it, wiping away potential clues. John Ramsey moved his daughter's body before the crime scene team arrived. No one took separate private statements from John and Patsy right away. These mistakes made it hard for investigators to know exactly what happened. At first, police focused on the family. The ransom note was written on paper from the house, with a pen from the house. The note asked for the exact amount of bonus money John Ramsey had received that year. Those facts made it look like someone in the home wrote the note after a terrible accident. John and Patsy hired lawyers very quickly, which made police more suspicious. But some experts believed a stranger had broken in through a basement window that was sometimes left open for holiday lights. They pointed to footprints in the basement, a spot on JonBenét's body that might have come from a stun gun, and bits of DNA found under her clothing that did not match anyone in the family. Retired FBI profiler John Douglas studied the case and said he was convinced the Ramseys were innocent. He pictured a man who planned to scare the family and maybe steal from them, then panicked when JonBenét got hurt. He thought this intruder carried a stun gun, tape, rope, and a roll of paper for the ransom note. After tying and silencing her, the man strangled her and hit her on the head. Then he ran away. In the years since, police and private investigators have looked at several suspects. Gary Oliva was a sex offender in Boulder whose DNA did not match the fluid found on JonBenét's clothes. Michael Helgoth, who lived nearby, died by suicide before police could question him fully, and his DNA tests were also inconclusive. In 2006, John Mark Carr confessed to the crime in Thailand, but his DNA did not match, and investigators say he lied. More than 20 years later, no one has been charged with JonBenét Ramsey's murder. The mix of family clues and signs of an outside attacker, together with the early mistakes at the scene, has made this case nearly impossible to solve. Families, police, and armchair detectives still study every detail, hoping that one day new evidence or better testing will finally bring the truth to light. Rodney King beating, 1991. On March 3, 1991, in Los Angeles, California, a man named Rodney King was pulled over by police after a high-speed chase. King had been drinking and did not stop right away when the police tried to pull him over. When he finally did, he got out of the car. That's when several police officers started to beat him. They used batons and kicked him many times while he was already on the ground. A man named George Holliday, who lived in a nearby apartment, recorded the scene on his home video camera. The video showed at least 4 officers hitting King over 50 times. He was badly hurt. His face and body were swollen, and he needed medical treatment. Holliday gave the video to a local news station, and it was soon shown all over the country. People were shocked. Many had already felt that police were unfair to black people, but this video showed it clearly. The 4 officers were charged with using too much force. However, in 1992, a mostly white jury found them not guilty. This caused one of the largest riots in U.S. history. The Los Angeles riots lasted for 6 days. Over 60 people died, and thousands were injured or arrested. Later, 2 of the officers were found guilty in a federal court. Rodney King survived and later spoke out about peace and understanding. His case became a key moment in the conversation about race and police actions in America. Waco Siege, Mount Carmel burning, 1993. In 1993, people across America watched as federal agents faced off against a small religious group in central Texas. This showdown came to be called the Waco Siege. It lasted more than 50 days and ended in tragedy. The group at the center of the siege was called the Branch Davidians. They were a small offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. A man named Victor Hutef started the group and built a compound on 77 acres near Waco. The members believed only they would be saved when Jesus returned. They lived apart from most people, following strict rules and holding services on site. In 1990, leadership passed to a man named David Koresh. He claimed to be a prophet chosen by God to bring about the end of the world. Under Koresh, the group changed. He began to take several young women as his wives and had many guns and rounds of ammunition in the compound. Word reached the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, that the Davidians were illegally stockpiling weapons. On February 28, 1993, ATF agents showed up at the compound with search and arrest warrants for David Koresh. Accounts differ on who opened fire first, but in the gun battle that followed, 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians were killed. The agents fell back and called in the FBI to handle the next steps. Nearly 900 lawmen and women, FBI agents, Texas Rangers, National Guard troops surrounded the compound. They tried to persuade Koresh to come out. For many days, they slipped in food and toilet paper. They set up loudspeakers so he could preach to his people over the radio. Some women and children left the compound, but Koresh and most of his followers stayed inside. When quiet talks failed, the FBI turned to harder measures. They cut off power, blasted bright lights at night, and played loud music around the clock. Still, Koresh would not surrender. On April 19, 1993, the Justice Department gave final approval to end the standoff. Armored vehicles punched holes in the compound walls and pumped in nearly 400 tear gas canisters. A few hours later, a fire broke out. Strong winds fanned the flames. Within an hour, the wooden buildings were an inferno. By the time firefighters and rescue crews reached the site, around 80 Branch Davidians lay dead, including David Koresh and 25 children. Most died from the fire or smoke, but 2 victims had been shot. 4 federal agents had also died over the course of the siege. In the months that followed, a grand jury charged 12 surviving Davidians with illegal weapons possession and helping kill the agents. Critics said the government had used too much force, and even that it had started the fire. In 1999, former Senator John Danforth conducted an independent review. He found that Koresh and his followers had set the blaze themselves and rejected claims of a federal cover-up. But suspicion remained. For many right-wing and militia groups, Waco became proof that the government would turn its guns on its own citizens. One man, U.S. Army veteran Timothy McVeigh, took that lesson to heart. 2 years to the day after the Waco fire, he bombed a federal building in Oklahoma City in revenge. To this day, the Waco Siege is remembered as a clash between people with deep religious beliefs and a government that used overwhelming force. Burning Kuwaiti oil fields, 1991. In 1991, near the end of the Gulf War, Iraqi forces were leaving Kuwait after months of occupation. Before retreating, they set fire to hundreds of oil wells across the desert. This act was planned to cause damage to Kuwait's economy and the environment. Around 600 oil wells were set on fire, and thick black smoke filled the sky for months. Photographers and news crews arrived to capture what it looked like. The most well-known photos show dark skies, flames rising from the ground, and oil-covered animals wandering through the area. In some photos, firefighters wearing heat suits are seen walking through thick smoke, trying to put out the fires. The fires burned for nearly 10 months. During that time, oil and soot rained from the sky. It blocked sunlight, turned day into night, and made the air hard to breathe. The heat from the fires was so strong it melted parts of the desert sand into glass. Wildlife was badly affected, and nearby water sources became polluted. Thousands of workers from different countries came to help control the disaster. They used special tools, chemicals, and even explosives to stop the burning. It cost billions of dollars to put out all the fires and fix the damage. Ted Kaczynski's cabin, 1996. In 1971, Theodore Ted Kaczynski left his small-town life and built a tiny cabin deep in the woods near Lincoln, Montana. He wanted to live by himself, off the grid, so he hunted and gathered food, porcupines, rabbits, squirrels, and cooked it over an open fire. Inside the 10 by 12-foot cabin, he kept books on survival, world languages, and nutrition. He even had 2 old typewriters on a shelf. Over the next 2 decades, Kaczynski mailed homemade bombs to airline offices and university buildings. Between 1978 and 1995, his devices wounded more than 20 people and killed 3. In April 1996, the FBI finally found him. Agents surrounded the cabin, arrested him, and carried him away in handcuffs. Kaczynski's attacks weren't about money or fame. He hated the way modern life put machines and big organizations above people's freedom and the health of the earth. In a long essay he called Industrial Society and Its Future, he argued that machines, factories, and growing cities forced us into lives we didn't really choose. He believed that as technology spread, people lost control over their own lives and nature was destroyed. By sending bombs to universities, airlines, and computer stores, Kaczynski wanted to shock the public and the government into noticing his ideas. He thought violence would draw enough attention that major newspapers would publish his essay. In fact, when the New York Times and Washington Post agreed to print his words in 1995, he called off his mailing campaign. He felt his point had been made. Deep down, Kaczynski hoped his actions would spark a larger movement to roll back technology and return to simpler, self-reliant ways of living. He saw himself as a kind of warning, believing that only a hard shakeup could stop society's march toward ever more machines and ever less freedom. When Kaczynski went to prison, the government seized everything in and around that cabin. In 2006, a federal court decided to auction off all his belongings, and that included the very cabin he had built. The idea was to raise money for his victims. At a public sale covered by the New York Times, the cabin, and items like his stove, shelves, and typewriters, brought in more than $200,000. A film and journalism museum in Washington, D.C., won the bid for the cabin. Workers carefully loaded it onto a huge flatbed truck. In D.C., they reassembled it inside the museum hall, piece by piece, like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Visitors could step inside and see the rough wood walls, the small cot area marked by grease from Kaczynski's body, and the faded spots where his hands and body had pressed against the floor and walls. The museum kept the cabin on display until late 2019, when it closed because of money problems. In 2020, ownership of the cabin passed to the FBI itself, this time into the lobby of the Bureau's main building in Washington. There it became part of a new public exhibit called the FBI Experience. The display walks people through many of the Bureau's most famous cases. Today, anyone can see that cabin in person. You must set up a tour of FBI headquarters at least a month in advance. Visitors need to send a request through their member of Congress, then clear security checks before the visit is confirmed. Skulls at Rwanda Genocide Memorial. This photo was taken at the Rwanda Genocide Memorial in Rwanda. It shows hundreds of human skulls and bones carefully placed inside a former church building. These remains belong to victims of the 1994 Rwandan Genocide. In just about 100 days, around 800,000 people were killed, most of them from the Tutsi minority group. The Rwanda church became a memorial because thousands of people had gone there hoping to find safety. They believed that a church would be a protected place. However, attackers broke in and killed almost everyone inside. They used guns, machetes, and grenades. After the killings, the church was left as it was, filled with the remains of the victims. Today, the skulls and bones are kept there to show visitors the scale of the violence. Bloodstains are still visible on the walls, and the clothes of victims are placed on pews and benches. The Rwandan genocide began because of long-standing tensions between two ethnic groups, the Hutu and the Tutsi. Political leaders used hate speech and propaganda to turn neighbors and friends against each other. The killing was highly organized, and many ordinary people took part in it. West Memphis 3 booking photos, 1993. Mugshots of the teenagers convicted amid a satanic panic over the murders of 3 boys. In 1993, 3 8-year-old boys, Stevie, Christopher, and Michael, were found dead in the woods by Robin Hood Hills in West Memphis, Arkansas. Their hands and feet were tied, and they had been drowned. Strange cuts, bite marks, and injuries to their private parts made the police worry it was part of a devil worship ritual. After 3 weeks, the town's attention turned to 3 local teens, Jesse, Jason, and Damien, who became known in the news as the West Memphis 3. At a 1994 trial, the state pointed to the boys' love of heavy metal music and Damien's talk of magic and odd beliefs. Though there was no DNA or firm proof tying them to the crime, the gruesome scene and these facts convinced the jury they had killed the boys in a satanic rite. This fit a wider trend of the time called the Satanic Panic, when rumors of secret devil cults and child abuse spread fast across America. Many later proven false claims, like those at the McMartin preschool in 1983, had stoked fear and made people ready to believe wild stories. Despite their claims of innocence, Jesse and Jason each got life in prison, and Damien was sent to death row. For years, no one looked for other suspects, and the 3 waited behind bars with no clear evidence against them. Around 2007, a wave of musicians, actors, and true crime fans began to speak out. Johnny Depp said on TV that he was 100% sure the 3 were innocent. Henry Rollins raised money for new DNA tests. Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks tweeted her joy when the men finally walked free. In 2011, after about 18 years locked up, the 3 took what is called an Alford plea. They agreed to a deal that let them go free without saying they were guilty. The state called it a conviction, but the men kept saying, "We did not do it." Once they left prison, the case was closed, and no one else was arrested. Still, many wonder who really killed those boys. 4 other ideas keep coming up. Mr. Bojangles, a black man, tall and muddy, carrying blood, was seen near a Bojangles restaurant the night of the murders. A child said he tried to offer a ride to one of the boys. Police never identified him. Edward Edwards, a real killer who once said he killed for money and boasted of crimes. A retired detective put him at dozens of unsolved murders, but many find that claim too wild. Christopher's father had all his teeth removed years before they should have been, yet bite marks were on the boys. He first said he lost his teeth 2 months before the crime, then said it was 4 years earlier. Some think he hid his teeth to avoid matching them to the marks. Stevie's stepdad had no solid alibi for the night the boys died. A neighbor saw him yelling at the boys, and one friend said, Hobbs went home to clean and change clothes instead of keeping up the search. Today, the West Memphis police say the case is closed, and they do not plan to chase these leads. Unless new proof appears or someone admits the truth, the families of Stevie, Christopher, and Michael may never know what really happened in those woods. Exhumation of a mass grave at Srebrenica. This photo shows workers digging up a mass grave near Srebrenica in Bosnia. The grave holds the bodies of men and boys killed during the Srebrenica massacre in July 1995. Over 8,000 Bosniak Muslims were taken by Bosnian Serb forces. They were told they would be moved to safety, but instead they were taken to fields, warehouses, and forests where they were shot. The bodies were first buried in hidden places. Later, to hide the crime, the killers used machines to dig up the graves and move the remains to new places. This broke many of the bodies into parts. Today, teams still try to find all the body parts and match them using DNA, so families can bury their loved ones. This photo comes from one of many dig sites. The people working there are experts. They use tools to carefully remove dirt. Each bone is marked and recorded. Clothes, shoes, and blindfolds are found too. These things help tell the story of what happened. After Yugoslavia broke apart, Bosnia declared independence. But inside Bosnia, there were three main groups: Bosniaks, mostly Muslim, Croats, mostly Catholic, and Serbs, mostly Orthodox Christian. The Bosnian Serbs wanted to create a separate Serb country and join it with Serbia. To do that, they tried to remove non-Serbs from areas they wanted to control. This included killing or forcing out Bosniak civilians in a campaign called ethnic cleansing. Srebrenica was a small town surrounded by Serb forces. The United Nations called it a safe area in 1993 and sent peacekeepers, but they were too few and lightly armed. In July 1995, Serb forces separated the men and boys from the women. The women were forced onto buses. The men and boys were taken away, then shot and buried in secret mass graves. Excavation of Leonard Lake's Wilseyville bunker, June 1985. Leonard Lake and Charles Ng were two of the most twisted killers in American history. Between 1984 and 1985, they kidnapped, tortured, and murdered many people in a hidden dungeon near Wilseyville, California. They even taped their crimes. Leonard Lake was born in San Francisco in 1945. When he was 6, his parents split up. He and his sisters went to live with their grandmother. Even as a small boy, Lake showed very strange behavior. He secretly took nude pictures of his sisters. He forced them into sexual acts. He also caught mice and killed them in chemicals. Lake finished high school in 1964 and joined the Marines. He served in Vietnam as a radar technician. Doctors said he had schizoid personality disorder. That means he did not want friends, felt little emotion, and stayed alone. He was then sent home early because of a breakdown and got therapy. He left the service in 1971. After the Marines, Lake tried college but quit. He spent time in a hippie commune, dabbled in amateur corn, and got married. His life then changed when he met another ex-Marine, Charles Ng. They became partners in crime. In 1984, Lake rented a small cabin from his wife. He built a soundproof room next to it. He called it his dungeon. It is thought he had already killed people there. When Charles Ng moved in, the two men set up a plan to lure victims to the cabin. They would tie them up, torture them, and kill them. Then they stripped their bodies and dumped the parts. They also made videos of the torture. One victim was Kathleen Allen. Her boyfriend, Michael Carroll, was friends with Ying and had gone missing in April 1985. Kathleen got an anonymous tip that Michael was hurt. She went to look for him and was kidnapped instead. She vanished that night. Another victim was Brenda O'Connor. Brenda, her husband, and their son were forced into the dungeon. Lake and Ng killed the husband and child first. They left Brenda alive long enough to terrify her before killing her too. On June 2, 1985, Charles Ng tried to steal a tool from a hardware store. He ran off, but police caught Lake when he came back to pay. Lake gave a false name, one that belonged to a missing person. Police searched his car and found an illegal gun. Lake was arrested, but instead of facing trial, he swallowed a hidden cyanide pill. He died in jail 4 days later. Police used Lake's car papers to find the cabin. Inside, they found burned and crushed human remains, about 40 pounds. They also found 2 buried pails. One held ID papers and items from victims. The other held Lake's journals and the torture videos. From those clues, police think Lake and Charles Ng killed up to 25 people. Charles Ng fled to Canada, but was arrested in 1985 after a shoplifting and shooting a guard. The U.S. finally got him back in 1991. He fought his trial for years, but was tried in 1999. Charles said he only held the camera and did not kill anyone. The torture videos proved otherwise. He was found guilty of killing 6 men, 3 women, and 2 babies. He was sentenced to death. Today, Charles Ng sits on death row at San Quentin prison. California has not carried out an execution since 2006, so he remains there without a set date. The Wem Ghost Polaroid, June 1995. Taken by farm worker Tony O'Rahilly during a barn fire in Wem, Shropshire, this grainy Polaroid shows the spectral figure of a girl in period dress amid the flames, claimed by locals to be the spirit of a 17th century arsonist. Susan Smith's car being towed, 1994. Susan always wanted a man's full attention. She married David and they had 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. But Susan still felt empty. She began having affairs everywhere. She slept with her co-worker Tom Finley, Tom's own father, and even her former stepdad. One day David walked in on Susan having a flirty call with Tom. Furious, he told Tom to stay away from his wife. And not long after, David filed for divorce. Heartbroken, Susan reached out to Tom again. He agreed to meet, but at a hot tub party, he kissed another woman. Jealous, Susan kissed a stranger at the same party. 2 days later, Tom sent her a letter. He said she wasn't acting like a proper woman, and most of all, "I like you, but I don't want kids." Susan was devastated. She loved Tom more than anything. She stormed into his workplace, crying and confessing every affair. Tom, shocked and repulsed, ended it for good. Susan, however, heard something different. Maybe they still had a chance if she proved she didn't have kids to hold him back. Susan made a cruel plan. She fed her boys pizza, strapped them into their car seats, and drove to a nearby lake. There, she parked, set the car in neutral, and let it roll into the deep water. The car sank in 6 minutes, taking both boys with it. Susan ran to a stranger's house and begged to use the phone. She called 911 and cried, "My car was stolen with my babies inside." Police launched a massive search. TV cameras spread the story of the missing carjacker, a black man who had forced Susan out of the car at a red light. For 9 days, Susan played the grieving mother on TV, begging for her children's safe return. But detectives spotted holes in her tale. The light she named could not have been red when she said, and she'd said no other cars were around. Under pressure, Susan took 2 lie detector tests that both suggested she was lying. Finally, she broke down and confessed. She had killed her sons herself. Susan was arrested, tried, and found guilty of double murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. Even behind bars, she sought attention, twice in trouble for affairs with prison guards, and later linked romantically to other inmates and men on the outside. In late August 1992, 21-year-old Tammy Zawicki was driving from her parents' home in New Jersey back to Grinnell College in Iowa. The day before, she had given her younger brother a ride to his school near Chicago. Although she did not have to return to Iowa until early September, Tammy decided to head out on August 23rd so she could take some photos for her yearbook. Around noon, she left a friend's dorm at Northwestern University and climbed into her 1985 Pontiac. The car had given her trouble on the trip. She and her brother had stopped several times to add oil and coolant. Her brother warned her to pull off at the next rest stop if the engine acted up again. By mid-afternoon, she was on Interstate 80 near mile marker 83 when the Pontiac began to overheat. Drivers passing by saw her standing at the side of the road, peering under the hood. A white tractor trailer, its cab and trailer marked by faded brown or orange stripes and Nebraska plates, pulled alongside her. A tall man with dark, bushy hair got out and spoke with Tammy. No one saw anything odd. but after a few minutes she climbed into his truck, and then she vanished. That same afternoon, Illinois State Police found Tammy's empty car abandoned on the highway. They placed a parking ticket on it and towed it to an impound lot the next day. When Tammy did not call home that evening, her family reported her missing on August 24th. At first, police thought she might have run off with a boyfriend, but Tammy had no known boyfriend and always called to say she arrived safely. About a week later, a truck driver named Robert Bullington saw a missing person flyer for Tammy. He told police he had watched her get into an 18-wheeler that day and recognized the driver's voice from CB radio as Jerry. He said Jerry had told him Tammy was fine, then drove off. On September 1st, just over a week after she disappeared, a man stopped beside Route 44 in Sarcoxie, Missouri, to cover his tools before rain. He spotted something wrapped in a red blanket off the road. It was Tammy's body. She had been dead for several days and had multiple wounds to her chest. The blanket bore a Kenworth Trucking Company label, the same maker of the truck she had entered. Over the next years, investigators looked at several long-haul truckers. One was Lonnie Beardropt, who had worked for Kenworth in Missouri and sold his rig soon after Tammy's death. Witnesses said he matched the man they saw, and he had given his wife a watch like Tammy's. His DNA did not match the tiny sample from the scene, but that sample was incomplete. He died in 2002 without ever being charged. Other suspects, including Bruce Mendenhall and Clark Perry Baldwin, were checked and cleared. Her family and friends still hope that new advances in DNA testing or someone's memory will finally reveal what happened on that hot August afternoon and bring justice for Tammy. Jeffrey Dahmer lived in apartment 213 of the Oxford Apartments at 924 North 25th Street in Milwaukee. He moved in during May 1990 and was arrested there on July 22, 1991. The building was a plain, cream-colored, two-story block with 49 units. After his arrest and the horror inside, local leaders decided the site should never stand again. Inside that small second-floor flat, police found scenes of gruesome horror. A freestanding freezer held 3 human skulls and one head in a box on a lower shelf. In the freezer compartment and inside the refrigerator were more body parts. Nearby, a blue 57-gallon barrel contained headless torsos, hands, limbs, and other remains. On shelves and in drawers lay more than 100 Polaroid photos showing victims at various stages of dismemberment. The living area had a beige couch, a tiny TV, and even a fish tank. A roll of carpet and a single wood-burning stove stood on the bare floor, all stained by blood and body oils over months of use. Investigators also found tools and chemicals that made it clear this was no ordinary home. They recovered bottles of ether and chloroform, likely used to drug victims, and a barrel of hydrochloric acid with dissolving torsos. Police called it a killing factory, since so many items for luring, drugging, killing, and dismembering were all in one small apartment. Just 15 months after officers uncovered the crimes, the Oxford Apartments were torn down in November 1992. Today, the lot at 924 North 25th Street remains empty, grass and weeds growing where the walls once stood. Neighbors sometimes drive by the vacant space, a quiet reminder of the evil that hid in plain sight. Blood stains on Miami steps, 1997. On the morning of July 15, 1997, Gianni Versace went out for a walk at his Miami Beach home. He waved to his assistant and said he would grab the day's newspapers. The sky was clear and the sun was bright. As he walked back with the papers, a man stepped up behind him. The man shot Versace once in the cheek with a .40 caliber pistol. Versace fell to the ground. The shooter then fired again into the back of his head to make sure he was dead. The man was 32-year-old Andrew Cunanan. His killing of the famous designer was only the last of several murders he had already done. Unlike a serial killer who plans and hides between murders, Andrew was a spree killer. He killed a group of people over a short time, did not cover his tracks, and kept moving until police caught up or he took his own life. Andrew was born August 31, 1969, to a Filipino-American father and an Italian-American mother. He grew up in a rich neighborhood in California with 2 sisters and 1 brother. His father had left the U.S. Navy and become a stockbroker, and the family was doing well. Andrew was bright, funny, and did well in school. He even had an IQ of 142. He spoke several languages, knew history and politics, and could tell a good story. He also liked to dress in wild clothes to get attention. Even though his parents would have accepted his being gay, Andrew was scared to tell them. He kept a double life. He told lies about his friends and the people he met. He looked for praise and gifts from men who paid for his company. When Andrew was 19, everything changed. His father was charged with stealing money and fled to the Philippines. His mother had no money and could not keep the house. Andrew felt his world crash. He did not stay to help. He followed his father to Asia, but hated seeing him poor and helpless. Back in the U.S., Andrew showed a darker side. He once shoved his mother so hard her shoulder popped out. He dropped out of college and used his charm and looks to work as a paid companion to rich men in San Francisco and San Diego. He lived a fast life of fancy cars, big tips, nice homes, and parties. Yet all of it was built on lies. By 1996, Andrew had lost his money, friends, and some of his health. He got hooked on pills, crack, and meth. He also began to kill. His first known victims were two men he once loved, Jeffrey Trail, a former Navy man, and David Madsen, a young art expert. He beat Trail in a rug with a hammer until he was dead. Madsen was found 2 days later, shot in the back and head. Police believe Andrew panicked and fled with him, then killed him too. A week later, he went to Chicago and killed Lee Miglin, a wealthy property owner who kept his private life secret. Miglin was stabbed, hit, his ribs broken, and throat. Andrew even made himself a sandwich in Miglin's kitchen before leaving. With 3 deaths behind him, Andrew drove to Miami. He stayed in a cheap hotel, waited for the right moment, and then killed Gianni Versace. A few days after Versace's murder, Andrew broke into a houseboat and shot himself in the head. Was it shame over his secret life, anger at losing family love, a craving for attention and power, or simply a mind too broken to stop? His trail of violence left shock, pain, and a question that still haunts us. What pushes a person to kill so many so fast? Kosovar refugee child passed through barbed wire fence. It shows 2-year-old Ajim Shala being passed through a barbed wire fence. The child is a Kosovar Albanian refugee. At that time, there was a war in Kosovo, which was part of the former Yugoslavia. The war was between the Yugoslav army, which was mostly Serb, and the Kosovo Liberation Army, a group of ethnic Albanians who wanted independence. The conflict led to NATO launching airstrikes against Yugoslavia. As the fighting grew, thousands of ethnic Albanians had to leave their homes. Many of them tried to escape to nearby countries like Macedonia and Albania. The photo was taken near the Blaise refugee camp, on the border between Kosovo and Macedonia. The camp was overcrowded. Refugees were arriving faster than the camp could handle. People were stuck at the border for days, with little food, water, or shelter. In the photo, the child is being handed through the fence to get into the camp. Barbed wire was used to control the flow of people and to keep order, but it also made it hard for families to stay together or move safely. The photographer Carol Guzzi from the Washington Post was covering the war and the refugee crisis. Amy Fisher mugshot, 1992. The Long Island Lolita after her arrest for the attempted murder of Mary Jo Buttafuoco. Joey and Mary Jo Buttafuoco both grew up on Long Island, New York. They met in high school in 1971 and married in 1977. They bought a house in Baldwin and had a son and a daughter. Joey worked in his family's auto body shop and for a time co-owned it. In 1987, Joey and Mary Jo wanted to move into a nicer house by the water in Massapequa. To do that, they needed to sell their old home. During this time, Joey told Mary Jo he owed a lot of money to his drug dealer. He feared the dealer would kill him, so Joey gave the house to the dealer instead of paying cash. A relative then lent them $50,000 so they could still buy their dream home. Mary Jo begged Joey to get help for his drug use. Joey agreed and spent time in counseling. For a few years, things went well. But Joey's gamble with the dealer left Mary Jo feeling the lowest she'd ever been. Somehow, Joey took this as a challenge to make life worse still. In mid-1991, 16-year-old Amy Fisher came into Joey's shop when her father brought in his Cadillac. Amy said Joey looked fat at first, but she kept returning with car repairs, and even after crashes. Joey began giving her rides on errands. On July 2, 1991, what started as chats in the shop turned into secret sex in motels, Joey's boat, and even the Fisher family home. Amy later worked as a part-time prostitute and bragged to friends that Joey loved her. By December 1991, Amy gave Joey an ultimatum: leave Mary Jo, or the affair was over. Instead of breaking up with his wife, Joey cut back on time with Amy and spent more time at home. Amy felt hurt and angry. She decided Mary Jo had to go. Amy got a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol from Peter Gagent, an auto parts salesman who drove her to get it. On March 19, 1992, Amy arrived at the Waco home around 11:40 a.m. Mary Jo was painting a bench alone. Amy rang the doorbell, called herself Anne Marie, and said Joey was seeing Amy's little sister, who didn't exist. Mary Jo didn't believe her and said she'd call Joey. As Mary Jo turned to go inside, Amy pulled out the gun and shot her once behind the right ear. Mary Jo fell to the ground badly hurt. Amy tried to fire again but didn't know how the gun worked. She pulled back the slide 3 times instead of pulling the trigger. Amy then ran away. A neighbor heard the shot, found Mary Jo, and called 911. Mary Jo was rushed to the hospital, treated, and survived. She later helped police identify Amy as the shooter. Police arrested Amy. She confessed, but claimed the second shot went off by accident. Mary Jo said Amy never hit her before shooting, and experts said the shot's angle didn't fit Amy's story. Amy pleaded guilty to reckless assault in September 1992 and faced sentencing in December. Upset and under stress, Amy tried to take her own life and was placed in a secure mental health unit. When she returned to court, she got the maximum 15-year sentence. Mary Jo spoke for Amy's early release. Amy left prison in 1999, later worked in adult entertainment, wrote a book, married in 2003, and divorced in 2015. By 2022, Amy was working as a webcam model. Joey never fully escaped trouble. In 1993, he was charged with 19 felonies but took a plea deal. He pled guilty to 1 count and served about 4 months in jail. In 1995, he pled no contest to solicitation of prostitution. In 2004, he served a year for auto insurance fraud, and in 2005, he pled no contest to illegal ammunition possession. Joey and Mary Jo moved to California, tried acting, and finally divorced in 2003. Rachel Nicholl murder scene on Wimbledon Common, July 15, 1992. Police officers combed through undergrowth on Wimbledon Common shortly after the brutal killing of 23-year-old Rachel Nicholl, whose body was found near her 2-year-old son's side. Rachel Jane Nicholl was born on November 23, 1968. Her parents, Andrew and Monica Nicholl, lived in Great Totham near Colchester in Essex, England. When she was 11, she began studying at Colchester High School for girls. Rachel loved acting, singing, and dancing. She joined the Essex Dance Theatre and practiced in her extra time. She was very good at it and really enjoyed the stage. Even so, when she finished school, she picked a more usual path. At 18, she moved to London to study English and history at university. She also worked part-time as a lifeguard in Richmond to pay for her classes. She was smart and worked hard to balance her job and her studies. While she was a lifeguard, Rachel met Andre Hanscom. They met when she was 20, and soon they became a couple. Not long after, they moved in together in South Balham, London. In 1989, they had a son, Alex. Rachel's world shifted to caring for her little boy. Even so, she still felt the pull of the stage and of children's TV. She dreamed of being on TV shows for kids, combining her love of performance with her love for children. By all accounts, the family was happy. They stayed in South Balham and built simple, caring lives. But on July 15, 1992, everything changed. Rachel, who was 23, and her son, Alex, almost 3, set off for a morning walk on Wimbledon Common. They brought their dog, Molly. This was a usual walk for them on a sunny summer morning. Around 10:20 a.m., as they walked through a well-used path, a man with a knife jumped out from the trees. First, he grabbed Alex and threw him down so he could not stop the attack. Then he attacked Rachel. He hurt her in the worst way. He stabbed her again and again, 49 times. One blow to her throat was so strong the coroner said it nearly cut her head off. Alex could not do anything but watch. The attacker ran away. Soon after, a passerby found Rachel under a tree and Alex sitting beside her. He was too shocked to move. The police came quickly, but more than 500 people had passed that way that morning. That meant hundreds of possible witnesses and suspects. Very soon the police chose one man, Colin Stagg, as their main suspect. Colin was 31 and walked his dog at the common. He told police he woke up with a bad headache that morning and took a short walk near a pond. Later, when he tried to return to the common, an officer stopped him. He gave his name and said he had been there. His honesty made the police think he was hiding something. They spent months and lots of energy on him, even using secret methods. Meanwhile, they missed links to other attacks. In time, the real killer came to light. His name is Robert Clive Napper. In 1989, he told his mother about attacks he had done, and she told the police. But no one joined those crimes to Rachel's murder. Napper had a hard life and many mental health troubles. He went on to become known as the Green Chain for attacks along the Green Chain Walk. In the end, Robert Napper was caught and convicted for Rachel's murder. It took a long fight and new evidence to free an innocent man and bring the true killer to justice. Ethnic Albanian children mourn in Vojnik. This photo was taken on May 3, 1998, in the village of Vojnik, Kosovo. It shows ethnic Albanian children mourning the loss of their family members. At that time, the Kosovo War was intensifying, with Serbian forces conducting operations against ethnic Albanian communities. Many civilians, including children, were caught in the violence. In the months leading up to this photo, several massacres occurred in the region. For instance, in March 1998, the village of Prekaz was attacked, resulting in the deaths of 55 people, most from the Jasari family. These events escalated tensions and led to further violence. The TV lounge where Menendez Brothers shot their parents. One night, two brothers walked into their parents' living room. Their names were Eric, 18, and Lyle, 21. Each held a shotgun. They shot their father 6 times and their mother 10 times while she tried to crawl away. Then they ran outside, grabbed more shells from the car, came back, and shot their mother one last time. After killing both parents, they shot each of them in the knees to make it look like a mob hit. They picked up the shell casings, left the house, and drove to a nearby movie theater. At the theater, they bought 2 tickets for Batman. After the show, they went back home and called 911. They told the operator they had just returned from the movie and found their parents dead. When the police arrived, Eric and Lyle told the same story. The officers saw the knee wounds and thought it might be a mafia job. Over the next few months, Eric and Lyle spent their father's money fast. They bought 2 fancy condos, a Jeep Wrangler, a Porsche, a Rolex watch, and hiring a top tennis coach costing $50,000 a year. Lyle even opened a Buffalo Wing restaurant. In just 6 months, they had used $700,000 of their father's cash. Meanwhile, a psychiatrist, let's call him Doc, was seeing both brothers in his office. Doc was having an affair with one of his patients, whom we'll call Mistress. One day, Eric told Doc in a therapy session that he and Lyle had killed their parents. Doc kept talking with them and even recorded part of that session. He later bragged to Mistress that his own clients were the ones in the news. After their affair turned ugly, Mistress stole Doc's tape recordings. She took them to the police, saying Doc had known about the killings but did not report them. The police listened to the tapes and heard Eric and Lyle admit what they had done. The brothers could not keep hiding. The police arrested Lyle right away, and Eric turned himself in a few days later. Eric and Lyle sat in jail for 3 years, waiting for their trial. The state said they killed their parents for money. Eric and Lyle said their father had hurt them for years. He was cruel and abusive. They argued they acted in self-defense to save themselves. If the court believed that, they would face manslaughter charges, not murder, and get a much lighter sentence. After 6 months of arguments, the trial ended with a hung jury. No one could agree. A year and a half later, the brothers faced a new trial. This time the judge would not let them tell the jury about their father's abuse. The jury had only two choices: guilty of first-degree murder or not guilty. They could not choose manslaughter. The jury found both brothers guilty of murder. They were sent to prison for life with no chance of parole. 27 years later, a former member of the boy band Menudo came forward. He said that when he was 14, Eric and Lyle's father had abused him too. This claim, if true, could back up the brothers' story of long-term abuse. Their lawyers say this new proof might win them a new trial or a better deal. For now, Eric and Lyle remain in prison. Tupac Shakur's bullet-riddled car, September 7, 1996. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur, one of the biggest names in American rap, was shot in Las Vegas. He was 25 years old. No one was ever charged, and the case is still open today. In the mid-1990s, rap was moving from the streets into the homes of millions of young people. Two coasts were in a serious fight: the West Coast and the East Coast. On the West Coast was Death Row Records, led by Suge Knight, with Tupac as its star. On the East Coast was Bad Boy Records, led by Puff Daddy, with Biggie Smalls, also called Notorious B.I.G., as its top star. Suge Knight and Puff Daddy did not like each other at all. Rumor had it that someone at Bad Boy Records offered $1 million to the Southside Crips, a gang in Los Angeles, to kill Suge and Tupac. The gang did not accept the money at the time. Still, on the night of September 7th, Tupac went to see Mike Tyson fight for the world title. The fight was at the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas. In the 1990s, whenever Tyson fought, it felt like a rough, young person version of the Super Bowl. Celebrities, gamblers, and gang members all packed the arena. Some known members of the Southside Crips were there, too. Tyson knocked out his opponent in less than 2 minutes. Right after the fight, Tupac and Suge Knight left to go to an after-party at Club 662, where Tupac was due to perform. As they walked out of the casino, they ran into Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips. Orlando had just beaten up one of Tupac's friends a few days earlier. Security cameras showed Tupac, Suge, and their bodyguards cornering Orlando and beating him badly. Then Tupac and Suge walked away as if nothing had happened. Orlando felt humiliated. He went back to his gang friends with a plan to get back at Tupac. Orlando was the nephew of Keef D, one of the top leaders of the Southside Crips. Keef D was the one who had been offered $1 million to kill Tupac and Suge. He had refused the money because he was already rich from selling drugs and had a good relationship with Suge until now. After the casino fight, Keef D agreed to help his nephew. Late that night, Orlando and 3 other gang members got into a white Cadillac and drove up and down the Las Vegas Strip, looking for Tupac. Soon they saw the black BMW carrying Suge Knight as the driver and Tupac as the front passenger. At the corner of East Flamingo Road and Colville Lane, the Cadillac pulled up next to the BMW. The back window rolled down and Orlando opened fire with a handgun. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. Suge was struck in the head by bits of the shattered window. Both men were rushed to the hospital. 6 days later, on September 13th, Tupac died from his wounds. The police investigation ran into dead ends. They could not trace the white Cadillac, and no one came forward to say they saw the shooters clearly. Orlando Anderson was named as a suspect, but was never charged. He was killed 2 years later in a different shooting. To this day, no one has been charged for Tupac's death. Wounded Sarajevo girl in hospital emergency room. A 7-year-old Bosnian girl, moments after being struck by mortar shrapnel, cries as medical staff guide her into the emergency ward of a Sarajevo hospital. Taken during a lull in the 43-month siege of the city, this image by Corinne Dufka highlights the daily peril faced by civilians, especially children, under relentless Serb artillery and sniper fire. Green River killer victim remains site, 1993. People who kill many people one by one are called serial killers. True crime fans often argue about who is the worst. Some famous names are Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. But one killer in Washington state killed more people over more years than almost anyone. He was called the Green River Killer. For years, he left a trail of young women's bodies near the Green River. The first known victim was Wendy Caulfield, age 16. On July 15, 1982, children playing by the river found her body floating in the water. A little over a month later, 4 more young women were found the same way. Police formed a big group to hunt the killer, but for a long time, they had no idea who he was. The killer's name was Gary Ridgway. He was born in 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah. His mother was strict and his father was quick to anger. As a boy, he wet the bed and felt ashamed when his mother scolded him. He also hurt animals, shooting birds with a BB gun. Even in school, he felt different. While he was still a teen, Ridgway stabbed a 6-year-old boy. The boy survived, but Ridgway was never caught. He finished high school, married his classmate Claudia, and joined the Navy in 1969. He was sent to Vietnam, where he spent time with local women and caught a disease. When he came home, he found his wife had been unfaithful, and they divorced. After that, Ridgway married again and had a son. His second wife, Marcia, saw odd signs. He would read the Bible out loud for hours, then turn violent without warning. He blamed women who did sex work, yet he kept seeing them. Soon he started picking up young women along Pacific Highway South. He drove them to lonely spots or into the woods. Ridgway used a trick to win trust. He showed a photo of his son and said he was a good father. Then, once the woman let her guard down, he choked her until she died. He hid the bodies by the river, in wooded areas, and even near the airport. Sometimes he came back at night to dig up their bodies again. Police first met Ridgway in April 1983, after a woman named Marie Malvar went missing. He denied doing anything, and they let him go. In May 1984, he even called the police group pretending to help. He passed a lie test, and again said he knew nothing. Experts, including officers who once hunted Ted Bundy, looked at his patterns, but he stayed hidden. In 1987, police took Ridgway's DNA, but tests were not done until new lab tools arrived years later. When they finally tested it, his DNA matched samples from crime scenes. Police arrested him at his job in a truck factory. In court, he made an agreement. He would say he was guilty and name every victim if they dropped the death penalty. In the end, Ridgway admitted killing 48 women. He got 48 life sentences plus extra years for hiding evidence. Using the notes and maps he gave them, police found many more bodies, giving families some peace. Ridgway says he lost count of how many he killed, and he may have killed more than 70. He now spends the rest of his life in prison. Pamela Smart arrested at SAU 21 offices, August 1, 1990. Pamela Smart was born in August 1967. In May 1989, at age 21, she married Greg Smart. They lived in Florida for a while Pamela finished college. Soon after, they moved to New Hampshire. Pamela took a well-paid job as the media coordinator at a local high school. She also volunteered in a drug awareness program called Project Self-Esteem. There, Pamela met 15-year-old William Billy Flynn. He came by her office every day, and she said he flirted with her. When Billy turned 16, they began a secret affair. Pamela later claimed her husband was unfaithful, and that made her feel alone and weak. But starting a romance with a student crossed a big line. On May 1, 1990, Pamela came home from a school meeting to find Greg dead on the floor of their condo. He had a single gunshot wound to the head. Pamela screamed and pounded on neighbors' doors. Police arrived and noted that some things were missing, small items and cash, but Greg's wallet, watch, and wedding ring were still there, as if the crime had been staged. Two of Billy's friends, Patrick Randall and Vance Latham, later told another teen that they had helped kill Greg. They said Pamela had left a back door unlocked. Randall held a knife to Greg's throat, while Billy shot him once with a .38 caliber revolver. Latham had supplied the gun and drove the getaway car. A fourth teen, Raymond Fowler, sat in the car and kept watch. An anonymous tip led police to 16-year-old Cecilia Pierce. She agreed to wear a hidden tape recorder while talking to Pamela. In those taped talks, Pamela pressed Cecilia to lie to police, to say that Cecilia's own father had brought a revolver to the station because he believed it was the murder weapon. Pamela clearly showed she already knew details of the killing. Ballistics tests on Ladham's gun proved it was the murder weapon. Because of deals with the teens, police arrested Pamela on August 1, 1990. Her trial began in 1991 and was broadcast on TV. The press said she had used her power over the teens to force them to kill her husband. The main proof against her was the teens' testimony in Cecilia's tapes. There was no fingerprint or DNA evidence linking Pamela to the murder. During the trial, Billy cried on the stand. He said Pamela had threatened to end their affair if he did not kill Greg. Cecilia testified that Pamela told her she needed Greg dead or she would lose her home, her money, even her dog. Pamela said she made those false statements to trick the real killer into revealing himself. She claimed she was only acting to find out who did it. The jury did not believe her. They found Pamela guilty of planning her husband's murder. She was 23 years old when she was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Patrick Randall and Billy Flynn each got 28 years to life. Both were released in 2015. Vance Latham got 18 years to life and was freed in 2005. Pamela has always said she is innocent. She is now seeking a chance for parole, but she has never admitted she did it. Her next opportunity to ask for mercy was in 2021. Many people believe she should stay in prison for life because of how she used and betrayed those teens.